In the wake of the Egyptian revolution, activists in the Middle East are turning up the heat on their government. Riots have broken out across the region. Thousands are rallying in Yemen and in Bahrain, where 2 demonstrators have been killed. 2 activists were also killed in clashes with police in the Iranian capital on Monday. The protest in Tehran took place just a day after the US State Department began inspiring Iran's opposition with Twitter messages in Farsi. It's the first such riot in the country for over a year. On Tuesday, Iranian MPs called for the opposition leaders to be tried and executed. US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says Washington clearly and directly supports the protesters. Well, for more, we can now cross live to Argentina and talk to author and researcher Adrian Salbuchi. Thanks very much indeed for joining us live here on RT. Now, experts say that Tehran is maintaining tight control over the demonstrations there at the moment, and the opposition leaders' lives are now in danger. In fact, 2 activists were hanged in the country just last month. What exactly is Washington hoping to achieve by supporting the protests there in Iran?
Well, clearly, good evening before everything. Clearly, the United States has to accept and has always accepted that its major failure in the region, in the Middle East, was the fall of Iran from their point of view in 1979 to when Ayatollah Khomeini and the revolution that brought him back to power took place. Let's not forget that Iran was clearly in American hands since 1953 when the CIA ousted President Mossadegh, Mohammad Mossadegh, and so clearly the United States will support anything that will promote what they normally call regime change in Iran, especially considering that Iran is such a powerful country from the point of view not only of its potential military and also its potential with oil, but also its potential as being a theocracy where in the Islamic world the Ayatollahs based in Tehran hold great sway over literally hundreds of millions of Muslims. So whatever happens in Iran is far more important than even what happened with Saddam Hussein in Iraq.
Well, we've seen it in Tunisia. We've seen it in Egypt. Could we see a regime change in Iran?
I very much doubt it. I think that the United States is showing that it had its geopolitical stance in the long run fails. They have installed puppet governments throughout the whole region, very, very much specifically in Egypt, with after the assassination of President Sadat, with the fullest support to Hosni Mubarak, who has now gone. And I think that we have to understand that what the United States now, I believe, is trying to achieve is a way to promote change in a way that will facilitate things for them. There's one point that I think is worth making here. We shouldn't think so much in terms of the United States does this or the United States does that, but rather the power, the global power structure that is entrenched inside the United States but is not working in the national interest of the people of the United States, and that has other very, very specific interests which might even go against the national interest of the United States of America. A case at hand, their unflinching and unconditional support for the political interests of the State of Israel, which normally go against the very interests of the people of the United States. So I think we have to be very careful when we speak of the United States, not as America, not even as Washington, not even as Obama or Bush before him, but rather at what we have to be very, very keen to understand what are the political objectives and interests of the global power structure, which is presently promoting world government gradually, and which is entrenched in the United States and to a great extent also in London and in the major capitals of Europe and even in my country, Argentina.
Well, yeah, can we talk about where you are at the moment, South America? You qualified the fact about global powers behind this and not necessarily the US, but without a doubt, many are saying the US was very much influential in the change of regimes which we've seen in Latin America in the past. Do you think you could draw any comparisons to what happened there in Latin America, the likes of Nicaragua, indeed even Chile and in Argentina, to what's happening in the Middle East now?
Definitely, but that would take us back a little bit to what used to be the bipolar world, where you had America and its allies, and the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, and its allies. So naturally, South America, Latin America as a whole, was always seen as the United States' backyard, and in a way, politically and militarily and economically, we were. So America would always promote very directly, Henry Kissinger, for example, military coups in Chile, in Argentina, in Brazil, throughout the region, because they felt it was was more trustworthy to have a military general in charge of Argentina or Chile or Brazil rather than promote democratic elections. However, with the demise of the Soviet Union, of the former Soviet Union, things changed very much. So it is no surprise in our region to have seen simultaneously many military coups in the 50s and the 60s and even the 70s, and then simultaneously all of our countries being forced back into so-called democracy. Because with the demise of the United States, if you look at it from the point of view of the global power structures, as I was saying, that operate to a great extent from America, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, in Britain, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Tavistock Institute, the Bilderberg Conference on a more ambitious stance, the best instrument that they have to control a country is so-called democracy, because although they call it democracy, it is basically a vote counting system handled by the mass media, where the guy who wins, whether it be a president or a prime minister or a senator or a deputy, is the one counted with all the support of the money power, whether it be for his campaign or for media and TV time and so forth. So, for example, in a country like Argentina, democracy is the best way they have to control the country against the people's interest. And I think that when I hear that they are promoting democracy in Egypt, I tremble for the Egyptians, because if it's going to be a democracy along the brand as was promoted in Argentina or elsewhere throughout Latin America, it will only help to support the long-term objectives of this global power structure operating from Europe and from the United States, and not the actual interest of we the people, to say it in a very colloquial and generalized manner.
OK, democracy is one thing. What about stability being another? Tony Blair was saying that he hopes what we see in Egypt will spark maybe a wave of democratic movements throughout the Middle East. You're saying what the outcome was there in South America, but nevertheless, are we going to see stability, or, as some people are saying, it's going to lead to further chaos? What's your prediction, finally, for the Middle East region?
I would probably say it will lead to further chaos, because there are too many interests in not seeing stability throughout the Middle East. You see, stability in the Middle East, is, especially, let's take the I word, so to speak, is very much geared on what happens with Israel. So as long as the state of Israel is there and giving unconditional support by the United States, we even have two Council on Foreign Relations academics and university professors, Stephen Walt from Harvard University, John Mearsheimer from Chicago University, writing a 600-page book called U.S. Foreign Policy and the Israel Lobby, where he shows that, as I was saying a few minutes before, the national interest of the United States comes second after the national interest of the State of Israel within Washington's power structure. So until that is resolved, there can be no stability in the region. So Hosni Mubarak was very much pro-Israel. Probably the regime that will be coming, whether it be through democratic elections or whatever, will also be very much pro-Israel. But until the time comes where the problem of Israel is addressed very, very straightforward, it will be very difficult to find stability there.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Adrian Salbuchi, live from Argentina. Thanks for being with us tonight.